It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce David Bruckenthal. We're here in your beautiful apartment in Alcana. And David, thank you so much for giving your very valuable time this morning. And we look forward to hearing about your story of your family and how you and
the Holocaust
survived.
Our story, my story, which you are going to hear now,
It's a completely
different with whatever you can imagine, completely different than the usual, even miraculous stories of the Holocaust, of the Shoah. There's two stars, the two stars of my story now are my parents, Rabbi Harav Hillel Bruckenthal, and my mother Amalia, Mali, her nickname was Mali, Bruckenthal ne Landau. My father was born in a curious name in a little town in Poland, in Galicia, which its name was Uszczyki Dolna. That's funny a bit, because everybody reacts like Ichikidana or something. Anyway, in Yiddish, it has also a name Istrik, in Galicia. He was born there, and to a common family, Shlomo and Sheba Bruckenthal. And when he became, was about 12 years, he was sent to go on studying Torah in Sanok. Sanok is the center town of all these areas there, which happened to be the rabbi of Sanok was one, later it became known, one of the most famous rabbis of Poland, Harav Meir Shapira. Meir Shapira was known from Lublin. He erected the Yeshiva Chachmei Lublin, but something which was even more important, which works until today and much more, is a Daf Yomi. He was rabbi of Sanok. And although my father was about 12 years old, they fall in love, if I can tell it this way, because my father was, I suppose so, an Eloi, and they were going together. He took it when later on Rav Meir Shapira went to Piotrkov to be the rabbi of Piotrkov. He took it with him. And something else, he authorized him, smicha of a rabbi, my father, when he was 16. Just the problem, if I call it, the problem of my father was he didn't tell anything about himself. He didn't start, I put it in this frame, he didn't start a sentence with the word I. That's such a modest man. He didn't want to tell about himself. That believe. So it happened so that his first important part of his life, he went together with Rabbi Meir Shapira. And then it happened so that another less famous rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Breuer, he was the Rosh Yeshiva of Frankfurt Yeshiva, Orthodox Yeshiva, Orthodox community. He was grandson of Rabbi Shamshon ben Raphael Hirsch. They were somehow connected, Rav Meir Shapira and Rav Yosef Breuer. And Rav Yosef Breuer needed, for his yeshiva, some Talmidei Chacham, young Talmidei Chacham, which should be the center of his yeshiva. And somehow they were connected. We don't know the real details, but it happened so that Rav Meir Shapira sent my father to the German community, separate community, Orthodox community in Frankfurt. And then, first of all, that Rabbi Shapira and my father were connected until the last days of Rabbi Shapira. The connection wrote to each other, and then I cannot say again they fall in love, I mean Rabbi Breuer, but it happened so that until the last day of Rabbi Breuer, years later in the United States, in Washington Heights, so my father was a youngster in the yeshiva, and I say it, I describe it not because he said so. Almost all the information about my father I know from other people. I heard from other people about him. And he was somehow a Ram teacher in the yeshiva, a very young one, but he was known in the whole community, the Orthodox community, and he was known there. I know from, but that's not the main story now, so we cannot go now into long details. Very interesting, and it happened so that 1933, when the Nazis came into power, and there was a whole mehumot was along Germany, Rabbi Breuer decided that because he didn't know, nobody know what's going on to be there, so to be in the safe side, he started negotiating with the Jewish community in Fiume in Italy to erect a branch of the yeshiva in Frankfurt. In case everything will be much harder and all this, then he'll move there. So in this branch, he was formerly the rabbi of this branch, but he put my father to be the head of this small group of yeshiva bochum there in Italy, but it didn't succeed because the community, it turned out that the Jewish community of Fiume was too small to support such a yeshiva. So, except one of the bachurim there, my father and all the other went for Aliyah to Eretz Israel. So my father came to Eretz Israel in the year of 34, and then he joined a group, a kibbutz, on a temporary place in Kfar Saba, Kibbutz Nor Agudati Kfar Saba. That was the name of the point. There was a problem, a long problem. Poalei Agudat Israel was somehow was connected to Agudat Israel, and they were waiting until the Agudat Israel will give support to be on a real place to get settled in Eretz Israel. But as usual, Agudat Israel didn't fulfill its promise, not in money, not in ground, not in nothing. That I waited there, this kibbutz, waited there about 10 years to get it. And then there was a parallel kibbutz in Gedera, which its name was Chafetz Chaim. And then it happened so, which is now not so important to tell about, but at the year of 44, they united together. They applied to the Sochnut HaYehudit, Rachmana Litzlan, the Zionim, to get a piece of land, to get a money support, budget or something, that they get to settle somewhere. And it happened so. Against Agudat Israel, Mosik Gdolei Torah, they consulted some other rabbis, but 10 years was good enough to wait. But the story of my father happened on a different way. Now I come to my mother. My mother was born from a Jewish family in Munich. In fact, her parents, her mother at the year of 18, her father at the year of 14 came also from Poland to relatives in Munich. So they settled there, they got married, her parents, family of Landau, and they had 5 children. My mother was the eldest. And it happened so that the year of 33, after the Nazis came into power, my grandfather decided And he was not like a real, like a usual Jew in. He didn't believe that's going to be good there. He declared, "I'm going to Palestine, to Eretz Israel," and he moved to Israel, prepared for a whole year. I'm not going to be. There are many, many, many stories about this move, and after a year, he told my grandmother, with her business and all this, to come, to take the children, to take the business, to come to Israel. It happened so, by the way, that the Admor Misadegora, the rabbi of Sadegora, when he came from time to time to Munich, he was sitting in the apartment of my grandfather, and for months like this, he accepted people, received people who come to me. He made, I suppose, also some money, you know, and so that was the beginning of a roman between my grandfather, family, and the rabbi of Sadegora. I'll tell you why it's important. He came to Palestine, to Eretz Israel, as a tourist, but he had also to get a certificate for himself. So the rabbi of Sadegora ordered 2 of his Hasidim, but in Eretz Israel, who were well off, everybody should put about 1,000 pounds at that time, you know, in the konto of Mr. Landau, and he can come to the authorities, to the mandate authorities, to show that he is a big capitalist, he has got a lot of money, he is going to invest in Eretz Israel. And he got his certificate and the family as a capitalist. And then, of course, he gave the money back. But the family was settled in Tel Aviv, in Avodah Street number 6. And my mother had to finish some of her studies, came half a year later, and she came to Tel Aviv. And then my mother, you will learn about her during my story. She was involved in the Noah Mizrahi society somehow, but he decided that was her expression. She wants to know more about real religious society. So we started to she heard about that kibbutz in Kfar Saba. And she came from time to time on Shabbatot, you know, as young girls do even today. Started visiting that kibbutz. And there she knew my father, met him, they fell in love, and got married in Tu B'Av Tar Tzadi Vav, which is in 1936, summer. Just something else to know, for you to know more about, just a bit about my father. She told us that my father told her just on her marriage day, on their marriage day, that he's a rabbi. No, but he gave shiurim there in the kibbutz and all that, but he didn't tell us that he's a rabbi at all. You know, that's just a type like this. They got married. After a half a year in the kibbutz, they got from Rabbi Breuer, and not only for him, and he applied to him, and also from Agudat Israel somehow, there is an hachshara. You know what's a hachshara?
But if you could explain
it's a place where youngsters, boys and girls, wherever they are from, are preparing themselves to get the profession and all this, which will fit their life in Palestine, in Eretz Israel.
To prepare them.
To prepare them. There, to prepare themselves, mainly in agriculture, but also in some other productive professions. The director of that Hachshara got a certificate, and he came to Israel, to Eretz Israel. So they need very urgent somebody to be there. So now it's a year already of end 36, starts 37. So at the beginning, the atmosphere in Europe, especially from somebody who came already from Europe, who knows what's going on there, that was something dangerous. I mean, nobody would have done something like this. So my father consulted Chazon Ish and all other people, and Rabbi Yosef Breuer asked him to come. He knew about this. The Hachshara of Agudat Israel was there. So my father decided to accept it, and they went to Enschede in Holland. Enschede is a town in Holland, not far from the German border. There was a Hachshara of about 70 boys and girls, mainly boys, about 10 girls, in the years of 16, 17 until 20. And they were waiting, in fact, for a certificate. Learning agriculture would help him to get earlier and a certificate to go to Eretz Israel. So it's not like today that you get a low-cost jet or much. By ship, it's not so easy. And in fact, when they came, my father was a director of the Hachshara, and they were born 3 boys. Me, David, and Israel, and Mordechai. 3 boys. 37, 38, and 38 and 39. David, Israel, and Mordechai, the 3 boys.
And were you the oldest?
Yeah, I'm the oldest. So, my father did what he understood to do the best. I have many stories about, just to let you know, the members of this Hachshara who survived the Holocaust, the war, just were until the last day of themselves, their last day, such admirers of my mother and my father. You cannot, I'm not going to give all these stories, but you can understand from the situation what happened later. So at May 40, the German invaded to Holland. Just something else which I remind, the papers of my father, of my parents, as citizens of the British Mandate in El Sabah were not finished. And he insisted he has to go back to Eretz Israel to arrange it, finally. And everybody who's a mumche, who's an expert, who understands everything, mocked him. He wanted to be a British citizen. That's the main enemy now of the German. You are going to arrange for you a British citizenship? You are Polish. What has the Polish against the German? What have the Germans against the Polish? Just clear. But he insists. One of his qualities of my father, he didn't say it. We say it in Hebrew, ro'eh et hanolad, which means he understands very well far in the future. He understood, and he insisted going back, and he arranged the papers. And it happened so, what I told you, that the German invaded to the Netherlands in the 10th of May, 40. And in June, just a month later, came a team of assessment. We are taking you, just to let you understand that the occupation of the Nazis in Holland began already with certain laws against Jews, but transports and all this started 2 years later. Nobody, my mother as well, why do they take him, you know, and where to? So, just to describe it, they took him, and my mother didn't know where to. So, now, my mother was about 26 years old, with three little kids, and the burden of the whole Hachshara, 70 youngsters on her shoulders. Suddenly, she has been already, in fact, the director of they looked at her what to do, which means to arrange everything, to arrange food, to their youngsters, to keep scheduled times of tefillah, of eating, and all this. These youngsters has to do that. Somebody directs them, is a leader of them. You know, they looked at her what to do. You know, a young woman, 26 years old, with 3 kids, and that's it. But you have to know my mother, Mali, which everybody knows her. She was completely 100% different from being what you can imagine yourself as a Rebbetzin, the one. She was a sportsman. She knew to swim, to walk, to whatever, you know. And she was very wise, and she was very fresh. No, not fresh. Fresh the Germany. She wasn't afraid of nothing. Neither the German nor the SS, and she knew very well the German language. She was a German-born lady, youngster. She was. So after some time, I just want to. I'm not going to tell you all the stories, but my mother decided she has to find out where is her husband taken to. So somebody told her there is somehow the government, the real government of this time now, is in Den Haag, in Hague. She went to Den Haag and came to this, there was a building, here is the government building in Den Haag. She came to the place, what do you need for, what are you looking for? She said, my husband was taken. I want to find out where he is. What is it? That's just taking somebody, you know. She said to the German, what is it? I want to find out wherever. So she said, there's somebody on the 6th floor. You can go, who is somebody you can find out? He let you know, if he knows. He comes up, he's a very honorable man, speaks him, she tells him, my father was taken, just, we don't know, broken. But this man there, he didn't know that she is Jewish, because comes a lady, speaks German well as he knows, the best German language, and her name is Bruckenthal. Bruckenthal can be a better German name. He's not a German. He was born in Munich, and that's it. She didn't tell him. But she asked, what's going on? Just taking people and, you know, what, kidnapping. What's going on with you, German? So he told me, yeah, the only reason which I can imagine, that was his answer, that somewhere in his papers or something was there may be that something on 4 generations before there was something a stain of something not all right with his blood. You know, maybe that this is a problem. They want to find. They took him. They want to find out what's going on with his grandparents. Where is he from, and all this. So where is he now? He said somewhere in the north of Holland. Place was School. These curious names in Dutch. So if you want to see him, just take the train, and there you can get it. He directed how to go, and wherever there's a problem that somebody wants to ask you, just say that Inkart has sent you. So it happened. She succeeded in getting to this camp in School, which is not far from the Atlantic Ocean, at the north of Holland. She got there. And she met my father. She talked to him, you know. First of all, she found that he's alive. And now, he didn't know, my father didn't know what's going on with them, with all these groups there. But I can tell you what I found out about, which was found out later, that was a place where the Germans have taken all these, even Jews who has a foreign citizenship. This one, the British citizenship, or as British, the British mandate, and they talk to them. I don't know why. Okay, my mother came back there. At least she knows that her husband is alive. And I have a good friend of mine. He's Professor Dan Michman. He's a Dutch one, and he is a specialist in Shoah, in Holocaust, and all this. And I came to Dan Michman. What is his name? Inkart. It opened all the gates to this for my mother to. What is that? You don't know who's Inkart? You know everything about the Shoah, and you don't know. It turned out that this man was in fact the High Commissioner of the SS in Holland. Just Mali Bruckenthal goes to the High Commissioner and comes to him with a complaint. What's going on? You are kidnapping my mother, my husband, and I don't know where he is. So he tells them, maybe there's a problem. Go send Inkart. Inkart has sent you. Can you imagine that? But that's how she worked. She wasn't afraid of nothing. And then after it happened so, that some time of her visit to my father at this camp there, this whole camp, and mainly the British one, I have a picture, I found later a picture of all the British captured people there, were taken to Oberschlesien in Germany, Poland, Silesia. In that place, in that area, were many camps, stalags of the German for foreign citizens, enemy soldiers, all this sort of. And the German had a rule. German, on one hand, they killed the Jews. On the other hand, they were very formal, to keep. They decided that Jews who belong to countries in which they have not yet conquered, they were not. The German army didn't. They are not going to kill them on the spot. They just want to put them in some prison or something, not to kill them. So my father was from Palestine at that time. So Romans tried to come to Palestine, but he didn't succeed. On the other hand, England, United Kingdom wasn't invaded. They didn't succeed. So in this meantime, they were going to keep them in the camp. My father, my mother, all this time, got a message from time to time through the Red Cross, because the Red Cross visited from time to time in these camps. I don't know what they saw them, what they believed them, but so once a year or something like that, my mother got messages, my father is alive. The story was, in short, about my father. In this place, in School, in Holland, were met together a small group of the shlichim of all the Zionist movements from Israel to several hachsharot in Holland, or just shlichim to Jewish communities which had come to Holland from Palestine at that time. And they met there, and they decided, I don't know whether it was a formal decision, but they decided, they decided all were kibbutzniks, who belonged to certain kibbutzim in Israel. So I say it because the life of kibbutz was known to all of them. Different movement, which means they decided, that in this group all will fight whatever can do for the one, and everyone will fight for the whole group. I can tell you now that their name, first of all, they call themselves the Combine. You know what's a Combine? No. Combine is a name of an agricultural machine, very known about agriculture. They call themselves just as a name. And I can tell you now, at this time of the story, that all survived. All of this, that wasn't the big group, but all these kibbutzniks really were all together, helped each other, whatever could do. And they survived. In the meantime, I can tell you something else, which means all these were captured by the German at June 40 and were liberated, if I can call it this way, at the 8th of May 45. That's 5 years together, 5 years under the German. Believe it. And the German told them from time to time, just wait, we are getting to Palestine or to England, whatever. And this Upper Silesia wasn't far from Auschwitz. If I can describe it, the smoke of Auschwitz was felt in Upper Silesia. They told them, really, just when we get to Palestine, that you end. But almost 5 years they were together, and they survived, all of them. One of them, which was somehow, a lot of formally, but the head of the group, Uri Kochva of Kibbutz Na'an, he described it in his, he wrote after that, some like a diary, but afterwards he wrote it, he said, when we saw the red roofs of the houses of the Carmel, then we knew that we did it. But that's the place where my mother didn't, there was almost no information what's going on with my father, with the husband. But on the other hand, she had forced to direct the Hachshara. Nobody knows what's going on. Let's say food. You have some of what we call here in Israel mishtar tzena. It was lack of many things. You have to rain something, people must live. Now, just as an example, she wanted very much to get fresh milk. She was also cooking there, the leader of Zachshara, but she was a cook. So she came to an agreement with the farmer there. She got from time to time, איך אומרים שימורים? Conserves from the joint. Somehow, שימורים, the conserves she got for the הכשרה. So she made an agreement with one of the farmers. The lack of food was for the whole population, not only for the הכשרה. But they kept kosher food, you know. She made an agreement with one of the farmers that they'll change. She will bring she'll give them some of this conserves for him, for his family, and he'll put, there was a big garden to the place of the הכשרה. He will put some in a hole, a can of milk at night, and they'll take it. So, many such things. And if you don't have the real food, you'll cook something else. But everybody was aware about the situation that was food. For instance, there were some outside of Enschede, in a suburb of Enschede, its name was Tvekelo. There was a place of the הכשרה. But there was another suburb on the other side of Enschede, its name was Hengelo. So my mother went by bicycle once a week or once a week to Hengelo. There was a big market there with the poor money what she had. She got from time to time money from I don't know where. And she bought all these things in the market there, which was cheaper and all this, just on a bicycle. God, that's some 7-10 kilometers. She did it on herself. But also in Hengelo was a place where the boys and the girls together could wash themselves with hot water or something. There was a mikveh there, in order just for the hot water. They were not married, these youngsters. But so she organized somehow that life must go on, not only in food and all this, but to to keep that the boys and the girls will go on time to the workplace. And all this, if you keep all this machine of time, of scheduled time, and something is going on, you were less afraid. That's some disorder or something like that. And there were some boys who couldn't give shiurim to the others, and praying time will be kept, and all this. Tell you some later about it, and this will show you, give you an example which saves them from certain thing. I want to. I have about 50 stories which I can tell you. I'll let you one or two of them, just that you can understand. I'll translate it on the spot. Once upon a time, my mother goes from Tvekelo, where the הכשרה was, to Hengelo, to buy. She drove her bicycle, and that's it. And she can't, just by accident, they didn't see anything. Suddenly come a soldier, a German soldier, some sort of SS man. Hello, you have to come with me. You don't know. It turned out that this place and don't tell you now everything, but he belonged to the headquarters of the Gestapo of the whole area. You have to come to me. What? A young lady goes by bicycle. What happens there? Why? She didn't understand. He takes her into the Gestapo headquarters, goes to the 5th floor there. She didn't understand why. It's not the best feeling to get into the headquarters. It turned out he takes her to a certain floor, the 5th floor. He sees something like in a big, like a meeting of 12 of all the commanders of the Gestapo are sitting there. He takes, and she says, hello, good morning. She says, lovely, what's going on? Oh, they say, a young German girl is there. You have to understand that these soldiers, now for a year or 2 years, haven't seen a German girl in the army. And it was known that the Dutch girls didn't want to have any connection to the German, which is not my mother. In her story, the Dutch girls were not like the many Jewish girls in Eretz Israel who started just to go out with the Australian soldiers. The Dutch kept on not to have any connection. So comes a girl. So she says, good morning, I'm a deutsches Mädel. Oh Lord, they say it's a German girl, what's going on? And like the Germans, they stand up to see about 12 SS men. And they were happy, so happy to meet a girl there. Everybody knew English and but German, they were starting to go. But my mother didn't know how she wants to get out from there. And they didn't know that she's Jewish. First question, somebody asked her, where are you from? She said, I'm from Munich. What are you doing here on the other side of the world? She said, I got some work here in an institute, educational institute, and I work here. And you are German, maybe you can help me. My husband ran away. I don't know why, he was very missed German, and he went to Germany. I don't know anything about him. She told them, perhaps you can find him for me. I'm alone. I'm working, but my husband, I miss my husband very much. He was missing Germany, so he went to Germany and didn't come back. Maybe you can help me. They had mercy, the young German girl who lost her husband. But suddenly the commanders of the highest rank told her, please give me your Kahnkarte. Kahnkarte is like a credit card, but it's meant the identity card, which gives all the details. You are where you're born, where you say. The point was that on one side, all the details were pure truth. You sure? But the point was, on the other side of this card was a big J. So my mother was afraid. I'll give them, I'll show them. Just when they just turn it on the other side, they find that they're just a Jewish girl here. So she decided, that's how she describes it in Hebrew, I have to attract them on another things, not to turn the card on the other side. Just to turning in the seat of the James, that's it. So there were 12 people there, you know, and a card of a nice German girl, everybody has to see it, you know, they put it to. So she said to the first one who had it, "You are from Schwaben." Schwaben, that's a district in Germany. Are you from Schwaben? How did you know that? He wondered. How did you know that I'm from Schwaben? You know, all of them are homesick and all this. I know it. I know. She explains. I know the, you know, the different pronunciation.
Like the dialects.
Of the different districts of Germany. You are from Schwaben. And he gives the card to his neighbor. And he already starts to, where I am from, I imagine that you are from Köln, Cologne. They wonder, you know, this girl knows everything. And that was how do you know so good our language? And he gives the other one. And everybody asks, and where am I from? You are from Friesland. Friesland, that's another. How do you know that? And there she got already some she got a better feeling already that she controls the atmosphere there. She said, "You are from Friesland." I'll tell you why. I know that in Friesland, everybody who makes some failure things or failed in some things got something here in his
forehead.
Yeah, something like that. And you got something here, and so I know that you are from Friesland. And everybody laughs, you know, how she mocked it, one of the colleagues. And just a clue, look at his brain here.
Wow.
He must, in Friesland, everybody who has something, who failed in something, or is some schlemil or any of that. That's not in English. Look at his brain. They are busy with all this laughing together. And so the next one was from Sachsen. And she gave another reason why he is. And to the end comes one from Prusland, Berlin. She says, and he didn't have to ask her. And she already said, "With you I don't talk at all. I don't want to talk to you alone." Why? Well, what happened? You are from Berlin and I am from Munich. We, the Bavarian, don't talk to this Berliner. That's not, we don't understand you, we don't want to hear from you, and we want You can imagine the laugh. You know, she felt already much better. Yeah, but she said, "Now I have to do everything to take the card back." Nobody put even. And she told them, but because she knew very good how German behave. She told them, "We had a lot of pleasure being together, but now I have to go to work, back to work." And the German, when they had to go to work, that's something very important. "No, you are right. And she took back the card. Work is above everything. And everybody stood up. When she described it, until today, she said, I tried to find out that I'd be sure that I have the card here. 50, 60 years later. But then the commander told to one of them, take her down, and whatever, and she'll go. And now what happened there? They got down. When they got to out of the building, the Nazi told her, now I just want to warn you, don't do again what you've done. She didn't know what you have done. Well, what did I do? It happened so that the headquarters of the Gestapo, the whole place before this building was supposed to be a sterilized place, that nobody should cross it, because of honor, because of security reasons. That's known. This situation is known in many armies, in many places over the world. But my mother with a bicycle, they crossed there. We didn't know that that's like a Gestapo here or something. But something else happened. He told her, don't do it again, and explained to her what's going on. But on the other hand, the whole place around this building was full of 100 Dutchmen. There was a rumor, it was told, that the German kidnapped or took some girl inside. Who knows what's going to be with her? And the German soldier who took her put his arm on his new friend, the Rebbetzin, I say here. He says, she's a friend. She knows that it's not allowed to get through here, and put his hand there, and the Dutchman see what's going on. This SS man goes so friendly with our girl, and they start cursing, mop and all this guy against it. Until he left her, but she couldn't explain what's going on there. And the cousin shouted and others. She had to go to find a bicycle. Everything, the pressure in the wheels was taken out by she has taken it. She knew a Jewish family there, some hundreds meters from this place. She went there, and she cried there. She tells about herself. She couldn't. That was a place where she couldn't. And they gave her. She explains it, describes it. They gave some hot tea and valerian, just to get. Can you imagine such
miracles? It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable. So she got out from the center of the Gestapo. Can you? But only, my mother said, three things, three points helped her to get through this period when she was alone. My father was somewhere, not known where exactly he is, and to go on working. Number one was that she was a Jew, although a German Jew, but she was already in Eretz Israel, a free country, where Jews are independent, where have self-confidence, can do what they wish to do. Although the British, all the British man, first of all, that's not a Gulitzit, not a Jew from the diaspora already. She had the self-confidence, she got it because already she was in the free, independent community of Jews in Eretz Israel, number one. I say it number one. Number two, what I had, which many Jews had not, the Emunah b'Kadosh Baruch Hu. I had it. I was a religious girl. I knew and was sure that he'll help me. That was. And number three, I had a feeling which I cannot describe it, what she says. I cannot somehow. I had the feeling that my husband, wherever he is transmitting or sends me some directions how to behave, how to solve this problem, how that. I had this feeling. Whether it's real or not, that's not important. I had the feeling. And my husband knew what he should do. So he helped me in advance of some 1,000 kilometers. I had this feeling, and that gave me self-confidence to go on. By the way, just to explain to you some quality of my father, one of the very few things which he told us about being captured by the German, he told us when he was taken, one of the things which he composed for himself, the Jewish diary. He knew how to reckon it and all this for several years in advance. So Shabbat is not a problem every 7 years, but just to know when are the Chagim, the Yom Kippur, the Rosh Hashanah, the high days.
He could do this himself.
For himself. Later on it turned out that he got information from other sources as well, but he did it. That shows again what I told you, I told you before, the Riyat HaNolad, Hira'at HaNolad. He had this quality. He knew, he understood very much what's going to happen. He wasn't sure, but he prepared himself. So that's one of the stories about my mother. Then again, I'll tell you another story. She got some information that few of the boys who were taken by the German from the Achshara are in some working camp in Holland, somewhere, but they have nothing to eat. They're hungry, mainly because they keep kosher. But not only that, they don't have, and they ask if she can somehow make it, she herself or somehow, she'll bring her food, them something to eat. And by this message included, she got information signed. You have to go to this station of the train, to go there, and then to go with your bicycle to go. She got a map and she wrote it on her hand, like soldiers. Unbelievable. She wrote all the signs and how to get there. And they told her, you have to go to get to a certain place in some forest, about, let's say, 200 meters, 300 meters from the camp. And there on this camp is a patrol every half an hour. You have to be there to wait when they're passing through, just take the food and come to the fence, and we'll keep looking, finding that you are coming, and we'll take you inside. So she went by train. In Holland, I don't know in other countries, but bicycle is something very important. She put whatever she could on this bicycle, but there's a special tram. When you are going with a bicycle on train, you put your bicycle on a special place there. There was about 10 stops. They put the other side of Holland. And she took it there, and she goes cycling through it was a big forest. People were there, German soldiers were there, but she, and she gets to the place, puts aside the bicycle, covers it with some branches of a tree there, just and took the whole package with her and waits until the patrol is moving, and she crosses there. Somebody of these boys who waited with her took her under there and hid her in the room. They took everything there, and then they have to put her back, at the right time. She did it, she found the bicycle, but there was a problem. That was already the end of the day. Now, because of the war, was no light in all over Holland at night, security, defense, and all. Then, and you cannot see the names of the stops, of the stations. She knew that's 10 stations, you have to count, to keep aware of such a tensing day. But she did it, and at the last station she got off. If you miss a right station, it was the right place, but there were about 7 kilometers to drive on, but she had no power anyway. So she walked with this bicycle, came to the Achshara, but it happened so. The Kodesh Baruch Hu, when he makes a drama, he makes it double time. It turns out everybody was closed. She couldn't open the gate. There was a chain about it. She shouted at her. Comes a German soldier. Who are you? I'm Ali Bruckenthal. We are waiting for you. It turns out, and she tells that David, when David saw her, where were you? I wanted to say Hamalach, and you were not here. She was saying Hamalach. You know what's Hamalach? Before getting... It turned out there were a team of Germans who came just at this evening to take her to the camp, to take her. But my mother, he didn't accept it. What are you coming? Who are you? Have you got any document? She says to the German, to this man, have you got any document who authorized to? I have the Swiss consul, and you have to ask his permission. That's not, I'm a German, I'm a British citizen from the, you cannot just take me. But the German, whatever they could do to the Jews, they did. But against formality, sometimes it's how way of thinking. And she shouted on them, "You cannot take it," and just like that. So they accepted it on the morning, but it didn't help really. On the morning, they connected to the Swiss consul, and he couldn't do anything against them. He gave them a permission, and she was taken to the Westerbork camp with 3 kids.
With you and your brothers?
My mother and 3 kids. But
did they take her because they knew she was Jewish?
Yeah. You know, the German got all the list of people, of names and all this. They got it from the Dutch. The Dutch gave it to them. How they to prefer this list or this list, that's a German decision. My mother I tell you, there was another adventure, but she knew the German. When the point was, the German described themselves as a whole propaganda of the Jew. A Jew was something, just novice, zero man, nothing. Whatever you orders him, when they see a lady who shouted on them, what are you doing here? What are you doing? Where's your document? They couldn't understand what's going on. They were confused. It worked. But I forgot some else. Another adventure I want to tell you. One morning, Sunday morning, there was, after the night of first saying Slichot, the first night of saying Slichot, the situation was as following. The boys of the Hachshara, there was a building of the Hachshara, but the boys did not sleep in this building. This building was our family, and the girls were living there, and the whole activities of the Hachshara, but the Bet Knesset, the dining hall, the working, and all this was in this building. But the boys were living in some other abandoned school building, which the authorities gave to them. You can live here. There was about 10 minutes walk. There was a problem in this to do with the slichot. You have to do slichot, if you say on the first night especially, you do it in the midnight. Now, there was a curfew starting at 11 o'clock. So you cannot say the shul was in the main building. You cannot say at Motzai Shabbat, at after Shabbat, at midnight, because there's a curfew, you cannot go back to sleep. So they decided, my mother decided, they together decided that the slichot will be prayed early in the morning in the main building. So it happened so. They were on the second floor where the shul was a dining hall and the shul. They were saying slichot and davening the shacharit. And my mother was Sunday morning was starting washing all the pots and everything from Sudash Lishit from yesterday. She was sitting there whole and starting washing. She was the director of the Hachshara, but you have to do what you have to do. And suddenly, two SS men enter the building on this, not on the main gate, and just next to the kitchen. My mother told us, she felt that's a death, that's something. So they came with a motorcycle, with two motorcycles. She asked them, what do you want? I said, we want just the list of the people who are living here. My mother felt something is, what is the list? She said, nobody is here. All the living people here are they went back to Germany. She told them, now it's a vacation time. I'm just a worker here, and I'm washing pots and all that you see. But she didn't want to wait. She was afraid that somebody will hear the noise from the second floor, and she started playing as she hysteric. What do you want from me, you know? She started like a Michiganer. Just I'm a worker here, whatever. She tried to push them out. They were confused, they didn't understand what's going on. She succeeded in pushing them out. Meanwhile, at least temporarily, nobody, I'm alone here, the boys are on vacation in Germany. What do you want? Go away. She started. And she succeeded just because of their behavior. They went away. Now, just to listen to that, just half a minute after they left, She heard that the motorcycle that was at the left. Just now, imagine, you are a religious man, you understand on the spot what I describe now. Half a minute after the left, 60 boys are ending the Shmona Esrei, saying, Ose Shalom Imrumam. Can you imagine something? In that case, no shrieing, no crying, no Buddha, no hysteric behavior will help. 60 was saying just Ose Shalom Imrumam, 3 steps backward and 3 steps. They left. My mother went to them, to one of the most important, one of the boys there, and told them, now you all, now it's very early, but you leave now on the spot and go everybody to his farmer. First of all, nobody will be here. I told them that I'm alone, I know that they'll come back again. You have to be at your farmer's, where you work to, every day. And so they did. And later on, my mother got a phone. There was a phone on the Achshara from some unknown lady, told her, so asked her, did the members of the Achshara somehow, as I said, went on a journey? If not, send them on a journey. Send them away with it. And what turned out later, that at that night, at the main synagogue of Enschede, the German knew that's going to be now the Slichot. They surrounded the synagogue. They said again the same thing. We just need for the list. Come with us. We take to just write down the list. Who are you? And put them on a train. And 2 weeks later, it was that everybody was not alive anymore in Mauthausen.
They took them all to Betas.
Of this community, of these people who pray the Slichot. And now they send another 2 soldiers. They want a list of who is here. And so they were kept alive. And it just, the intuition of my mother, made herself hysterics, succeeded in sending them away, and then sent them on the spot, go to your farmers.
Now, can I just ask David, did the farmers know that they were Jewish boys?
Of course.
And the farmers, it was dangerous to
that was occasion, was not already the usual procedure of transport and all this. That was before that time. My mother told this story. Many of their stories, before we gave it she gave it on Yad Vashem, we knew the stories, most of them. But I found later on, because I read through all documents and many historical things to do with the Shoah, with the Holocaust, I found out that really what happened in the main community of Enschede that night. So that's really what happened. But then the Germans did something else. It was not, but if they would have taken, the whole Achshara at that night. But because of a Michigan worker there in the kitchen who was cleaning the pots and all this, which will remain from Shabbat, they were surviving. They were survived. Unbelievable. You can think that God helped her, not say, okay, but that's what happened. Okay, my mother was taken on that day. She tells, because of the first move from the Achshara to the train, we were taken by this SS man by car. We were so happy, the kids, that the first time in our life we were going by car. At that time was not everybody had a car.
How old were you?
Huh?
How old were you?
I was 5 years old.
And you remember this?
This, I don't remember. I mean, not that the part of going by car, that's not, but I remember many things from that time as a memory of a kid. I didn't understand everything. The point was, my mother, because of her character and all these qualities, she told us later, she decided that we can get from her self-confidence, the most self-confidence that something is, that everything is all right. That meant not to be afraid, as many Jews did. So she got it. We were happy to go with the two soldiers by car, you know, a sensation. So we were taken to the train and by train to the Westerbork camp. Westerbork was the camp where the Nazis were taking the Jews in Holland, and from Westerbork were going the trains directly either to Auschwitz or to Majdanek. At this camp, nobody knew where the Jews are going to. And the Germans made a whole campaign, a fraud campaign. They told us that Jews are getting, they are taking Jews to the east to resettle productively. You know, the Jews are paradise and all this. They're going to be settled there and working. And even they, from time to time, when the transport started, were coming by mail, in fact, by post, cards, anonymous cards, were putting there. We are in a better situation, we are working, we are getting, you know, everything was falsified and all that. And my mother, one of the things she didn't believe. She didn't believe, she knew that's not true. When you take a lady 70 years old who cannot almost not move, productive, to a life of productivity, to work, to what about this? She didn't believe. So the life in the camp was not too good, let's put it this way.
Do you remember being in the camp?
Of course,
Do you remember?
Not everything, but...
Were you together with your mother and your brothers?
Yeah, I tell you, she, first of all, beside other things, she decided to make we, the kids, the three, will be busy as long as she can make us busy with anything. She walking, taking her there, not to seek and be afraid what's going to be tomorrow. Now, just to find out who she was. There was the night of Yom Kol Nidre. People were living there in barracks. And one was a soldier who was guarding there. My mother get to the soldier, told him, listen, we on this night have a special prayer of Kol Nidre, and I want to go there. It was a curfew that night, Ifshan. This naive soldier, so, is it very important? Very important. Look, I'll accompany you to this place of the synagogue, and he didn't think that he leaves the whole barrack alone. He is together. He takes the lady, tells him that's very important. And he brought her to the Kol Nidre prayers, and he told her, look, I'm sure everything is dark here. You won't find your way back. So I'm going to wait here until you finish your you know, that was happened. She was, he accompanied her back to that night of Konedre. So there was a shul in there were many other social activities in the camp, because people were waiting. Nobody knew what's going on, when and what. A meal was once a day. You know, people were queuing and waiting. You know, there was some soup and all this. Almost nothing. People were hungry. And the fact is, when people came with the train to the camp, there was a whole office there, the officials were taking all what you have. I mean, something worthy and all this. And my mother got over this. She convinced, look, it's very late for you. You have to go to sleep and all that, you know. Leave it on. People are very tired now. Leave it on. Nobody touched her cases. You can understand that just if you take something, that's no question, you know, you can convince some other. Unbelievable thing. But the life, it was very cold. Just something piquant. We were having floors of the beds, one above the other.
Bunk beds.
Yeah. So it happened so. My mother told that we, the three boys, the three kids, starting again in Westerbork, to wet in the bed at night. We were already out of it. So it happened so. From the upper floor, it came down, and then and everything was to the lowest floor. So my mother decided all three kids should come down to the lowest bed together with her. First of all, you have another three.
It's a blanket.
Yeah, blanket. Yeah. Though it will be more warm, it will be warmer, but there's not enough space. My mother, all the time when we lived in the Westerbork, she was sleeping by being seated. She couldn't sleep. She sat. And she slept there, and the three kids together with her. And what happened under the bed, that's not important anymore. Then at least 3 blankets, it's better than... Food was a problem, but my mother had a little piece of biscuits. It happened so that we three, our birthday was in October. 20th October, 23rd of October, and 26th of October.
All three?
All three, year after year. Just something piquant. In the Netherlands, to get birth to a boy was a bad luck. If you get a girl, you have a good luck. If you get a boy, that's not good. You know, opposite to the Middle East, let's put it this way, among Jews. The doctor at the hospital, the Dutchman had mercy with my mother, that she gets in 3 years, year after year, 3 boys. You know, it's unbelievable for them, you know. They have mercy for him. So it happened so. In October we were at the Westerbork camp. So she was left a few biscuits. And in the first one, the celebration was she gives a biscuit to Mordechai, I think. She gets the biscuit as a present for not by Israel. Gets a biscuit as a present for the birthday. Next birthday was mine. I got also my biscuit. And Mordechai was the last one. There was no biscuit anymore. How come? What shall we do? What should he cried? I get not my present. That's biscuit. And then it happened so. Comes some youngster to the bar. Where's Mali Bruckenthal? Mali Bruckenthal, people on the office, on the headquarters are looking for you. You are going to Palestine. My mother said, don't, with your jokes. He was known as a joker. With your jokes, go away. You don't have... No, yeah, this time I'm telling the truth. But she didn't believe it. But somebody later came also, said, Mali is being looked for. Where were you? And she took somebody who was known in over there, a lawman in this bar. He should come with her to the Judenrat to see what's going on. And they were waiting there. It turns out that Mali Bruckenthal is being looked for to go to Palestine. How it will, what's going on, nobody understood. She even didn't know, but that was a fact. And believe me that I'm living many stories of the life in the camp, because then we can get another 2-3 hours. That's too much. Okay, it turned out, in short, the situation was the following. In the middle of the war was signed an agreement through the Swiss authorities, between the English and the German, to exchange British women, children who were captured by the German, who are now under the German, to exchange them with citizens, German citizens, even men and women, who are under the England or English authorities.
There was the Templars.
Yeah, so that was the first exchange like that. And together with my mother's were also 2 other women, friends of her, whose husbands were together with my father in Upper Silesia in this camp. Just by the way. So they were also in this list. The truth was that the members of this group to be exchanged, were in all over Europe, in Auschwitz, in Majdanek, in ghettos, and the German had to look for them, to find out where they are. That wasn't so easy. And in fact, they found only 50% of the list, because I found it later, because others were killed somehow, or they didn't find them. So anyway, we were taken by, at the day, we were supposed to be taken to the east. That was the decision. And we were taken to Amsterdam. The 3 women, my mother and 2 were the kids, and 2 other women, which were also, their husbands were in Upper Silesia, with my father there.
If the list wouldn't have come, they would have sent you to the camps most probably.
The German had to find out the list, not to find out who are or English or real English women, goys, or like us. We were also some like British women with kids from Palestine, British mandate. And women like that, they were not only women, but most of them were among whole Europe in seven.
There was also in Bergen-Belsen. There was
they had to find out. I read a paper which somebody who belonged to the group in Upper Silesia camp, after the war, years after that, he made a research in the foreign affairs, in the German foreign affairs papers, archive, and he found out the lists of the whole names. There were supposed to be the 150 men. And he found out that the group of us was eventually 69. And the all others, he found the papers were signed nicht zu befinden, which means not to be found. But by hand, somebody there. They didn't find these people. So we were taken from Westerbork to Amsterdam.
Can I ask, how long did you spend in Westerbork?
3.5 months. That's something like that. That was, 3.5 months. I want to tell you something else which I remember now. How were people taken to transport to the east from Westerbork? The German told to the Judenrat, you have to prepare the list. Yeah, they didn't want to, their hands were even, almost clean. You have to decide who to be sent by the transport. So the first was a fixed number which you have to prepare. So this list of people were taken at the night before going to the east, were concentrated in 1 or 2 barracks there, with the fence with the fence about rounding that nobody. For the German, was one of the important things that the number will be kept.
Yeah.
So it happened so that my mother, we didn't understand it so well as kids. My mother and 3 kids, 2 times, and in the morning, before getting to the train, came some German official who was reading the names here to be sure that all the names are, and it happened 2 times that we were in such a barrack, and my mother and 3 kids, were all left at the end, the whole wagon. And this turned out, because it turned out in the meantime that we somehow belonged to the British citizens or something like that, so they decided to leave us, to be sure that we are not going to be sent. As it happened so, this order is almost, you don't know, one hand does so. We were in such a list already, but we got over it. So my mother was, we were taken to Amsterdam, and from Amsterdam we were taken with 2 SS men to a train, a regular army train, which was going through Köln, through Cologne to Vienna. but just something to fit it to what's going on with the war. The train, we had a special place, chamber in the train, 2 SS men, Mali Bruckenthal and 3 kids. To keep safe, that they want to be sure that we are getting to Vienna. That was more important who we are. And the train, my mother tells, was full of soldiers on the way to the Eastern Front. You know, soldiers were happy they're going to fight. They didn't know what's going on there in Stalingrad and all this, you know. But when they saw a woman with 3 kids and 2 SS men having a chamber, they were sure that this lady and the 3 children are a wife of a very important general on the front, which were taken by special 2 soldiers, bringing to them, because we are very German. You can imagine.
Wow.
That's funny. My mother told us about when we were passed through Cologne. She was very disappointed because she was sure, because all the what was told about the war, bombing and all this, that the dome of Cologne, which is something very, was already bombed and all. And she said, he saw through the train that man in the street, everything is going on as usual. That the Germans are feeling free and everything is going on. So we got to Vienna.
Were you the only, your mother and the 3 boys, were you the only ones from Westerbork that were taken on
and the 2 ladies, and the 2 other kibbutzniks, ladies who were together with us in Westerbork, they also taken, yeah. So eventually we got to Vienna, which was a place where all the people who belong to this group, to this list, were supposed to come together and then to go on. We spent 10 days in Vienna because it took time until the Germans have brought all the people who belong to the list. And I told you, they didn't find all of them. And there were 10 days. So my mother, as you get now a bit of a character, she didn't want to waste the time there in Vienna. She knew Vienna. First of all, I remember as a kid, she took us to the, Gan Chayot.
At the zoo.
At the zoo of Vienna, which was very famous.
And you were like free, you could go around?
Nobody knew. We had this place to live in, to sleep in a certain abandoned school, empty school building there in Vienna. Some said, but no, I don't know whether it's true, that Hitler himself, also part of his elementary school was in that school, but that's not important, I don't know. She took us to the zoo. I remember the one gorilla feeds a young one, and you know, mice. But I remember something else. The streets of Vienna were full of invalid soldiers, German soldiers. You know, having no...
amputees.
Yeah, amputated hands and feet. Was all the... I remember that, you know, we were going walking, spending the time there, and it turned out later I found out that that time, November 42, that was the bad time of the Germans in the Russian front. And they didn't want, the German didn't want to bring their invalids there, all the soldiers who were, the losses and all to bring them back to Germany, to not to lower down the morale of the German population. So they kept them in Vienna. That was, I read somewhere, but that's not the views which I said. My mother told us something. One day, one of these 10 days, she took the other two ladies from some kibbutzim, but they didn't know German. They came to Eretz Israel from some Russia or Poland. She told them to keep quiet, not to speak. She went to, there's a famous coffee house in Sacher, I think, in Vienna, very famous, all the Bohemia and all. And she went there, and a waiter comes. My mother tells him, "Where are the people here? Where are all of the famous people? I'm looking for them, the theater people, the writers and all them. Where are they here? What's going on?" Most of them were Jews, you can imagine. Where are they? And this waitress tells her, "What do you know? Don't you know what's going on? They were taken." "Why? What's going on?" My mother pretend, "What's going on?" In German, of course. No, she tells, "Don't you know the Austrian?" She tells us, the waitress tells her, "Don't you know the Austrian? Whoever shows them sausages, they go after it. That's the reason we were sausage. The Austrian went after the German, the Anschluss and all this. Don't you know what's going on? They were taking all the Jews. Both of them." She explains, my mother. Anyway, my mother wanted to feel, not to waste the time. And after 10 days, we were starting to travel to Istanbul.
And David, what year was this?
Huh?
What year?
42, and November 22, 42.
42.
The middle, if you can compare, all the news from the Soviet front, on the other side, in Valins, in the street of Vienna, and we were going to find out what's going on. She went also to the place to see out what's going on in the ghetto, of the Jewish, most of them were living there in Vienna. She found the 3 old people, and they told her all were taken, and we were sure we are also going to be taken. And my mother understood it, she came from Holland. In Holland, that's the same way, what's going on there. There was one reason, main reason. I told you why was it we were waiting 10 days for that. They had to find out the people who belonged to the list. But there was also a by story. There was one of the families, just happened so in Poland, his young son was taken by the German to a camp, and they didn't know what. And now comes the news that you are going back to Palestine, and they were looking for their son. They didn't know. He was taken to another. Now they didn't want to go. But people told them, "You have the chance now, just go." And somebody told them, "Look, he is a boy, a bit older than your son, whose family was taken already. Take him as your son." And they took him. But in Vienna, they still pressed on the Red Cross and all what could be. Maybe that their real son will be found somewhere. and he wasn't found. This also was that's one of the reasons why it took 10 days to wait in Vienna. Because you know already the Germans, they had an agreement, they had to fulfill the agreement, the number should be as it should be. So, just to tell you the end of this boy who replaced her was later on famous in Israel. You should, as I suppose you know, there was a man whose name Dr. Eliyahu Ben Elisar, who was an ambassador in the United States, who was in Egypt, who he was an ambassador. After Begin came, he belonged to Ben Elisar, and later he was a bit a problematic man. For instance, I wanted to meet him. He was also, I suppose, all the time under this problem. His parents were taken. He is a replacement of another boy. You know, this were not his real parents. He was in good connection with them, that he was saved by them, but on the other hand, they were not his parents. You know, I'm not going now to teach psychology, but that was the name of Ben Elisar. Anyway, the train was started going, a special train of ours, I tell you, I name it as my Orient Express train. So we were taken from Vienna to Istanbul. This way took many days because there were problems during this trip. Bombing, they were afraid of partisans, you know, all this time. It took about 12 days to get from Vienna to Istanbul. One of in our family legend is a story that, just imagine the train, everything is covered, no light at night, and stops. But you don't know what's going on. Maybe it could be an ambush of partisans, it could be all windows are covered. There's a quiet in the whole, nobody knows what's going on, that's the story. And my brother Israel, Israel, everything is quiet, and suddenly the voice of a little kid in the quietness of vielleicht ist es ein kleines Mäuschen über der Schiene gelaufen und der Lokomotiv hat sich erschrocken und gestoppt. It means, he says as a kid, maybe that the little mouse has crossed the
tracks.
And the locomotive of the train was so, he didn't know what to do, and he stopped. That's the reason, you know, that's the thing. Wow. That's the story, a real story, the truth of it. And the whole train was mocking, he was laughing, you know, just to feeling free from the fear. Anyway, we got to Istanbul. I remember that very well. And that was a big place where people were signing and all this. The exchange was there formally.
In Istanbul, and you could feel that you were free, more free?
Yeah, and what happened, something as my mother told me, during that time, a young girl, German girl, comes to my mother. I heard that your husband is in Upper Silesia in our camp there. Yeah. I belong to the Dienstmädel, something like Shirut Leumi today.
Yeah, National Service.
National Service, young, a very young one. If you write a postcard to your husband, I can arrange settlement. I can take for it that this card is coming in 1 or 2 days to your husband. My mother wrote, Hillel, we are on our way to Eretz Israel. There we are now in Istanbul. And it happened so that he got the card.
Wow.
Can you imagine the...
So David, you're in Istanbul and you remember?
Yeah, I remember
seeing
crossing the Bosporus by ship, and yeah, I remember that.
Wow.
So this was a place in Istanbul, was a big hall where, you know, tables with signing, re-signing and all this, was the English side and the German temples and all this side. And they filled all the forms, you know, that and then after this was finished, we were taken, you know, Turkey was in this war neutral. This means, why I'm speaking about it, because from Istanbul to the eastern part of Syria, we were taken still by the official train of Turkey, maybe even part of the Orient Express, but it was a very good place. But now it comes. When we get to Syria, to Haleb, Haleb, then at that place we were taken already officially by the British. Why do I mention it? Because in all this journey, the behavior of the British authorities, again, about us, was much worse comparing to the German one. Because the German had to fill their duty according to the agreement to bring these people alive and the right number and all this. And my mother tells that the German team, before crossing the border to Turkey, they're taking out the army uniform and dressing civilian. And the British did the same on the contrary in Syria. They were putting us on the worst trains, you know, for cows, for this. They were taking us. But just, they took us, you know, we are already in Syria. So we were put in this train from Haleb to southern part of Syria, to Tzemach, Afula, Atlit. Believe it or not. When I'm telling to somebody, I made my aliyah by train. Who can? He's crazy. How could it be? This is the right truth. It's a plain truth. We were coming. In fact, we were coming by train to Afula, and in Afula, it turned out there was a whole rumor among us coming from a group from camps in Europe. Just to remind you, we were the first alive people
Come from Europe.
who come, not just from Europe, from camps from Europe, from the ghettos, from, and any other, I don't know about the Auschwitz, but from many camps like this, from Westerbork, doesn't matter, but the people alive who could tell what's really going on there. Just, you can read it in all the books. The people in Eretz Israel, from the men in the street till the leadership of, you know, the Sochnut, and had no real idea what's going on in Europe. That was a combined situation, because the German also make every fraud to tell stories what's going on and to resettle in the east part of Europe, and all these stories about. But the people here didn't understand what's going on. Even in that time, when it was, let's say, an item in the paper, in Haaretz, Davar, 30,000 Jews were taken from Vilna. Let's put it this way. This headline was put into quotation marks. Somebody says that we don't know whether it's true or not. What is the meaning? People didn't know. Even the leadership, Ben Gurion, Kaplan, Dobkin, all this, the leadership of the Sochnut was really the government of this Yishuv here, of the Mandatorian Jewish Yishuv in Palestine, in Earth. They didn't understand what's going on. I can tell you stories about it, but leave it alone.
Did your mother tell anybody? Did she?
Everybody told them. Can tell you, people didn't believe. Didn't believe. I tell you just a little story. The parents of my mother lived in Tel Aviv. That's a business there. After the story, people were coming, whether you know about the whole, during the whole issue was a big fuss about it. Somebody knocked on the door in Avodah 6, Avodah Street, they were living. Somebody knocked on the door of the apartment of my grandmother. It was noon. She was getting out from the business just to prepare lunch. Somebody comes in, an elderly man. He is the family Landau. He says, yeah, I heard that your daughter came yesterday or day before yesterday from Europe. And my grandmother said, Gott sei Dank, thanks to God. And this man started shouting, knocking on the table. Don't you understand that you are sacrificed on the British propaganda about what's going on in Europe? Don't you understand that as a whole bluff? I was a lawyer 30 years in Berlin. Can you tell such stories about the German? He shouted on my mother, on my grandmother. That's just nonsense. That's British propaganda, and your daughter is joining it by telling stories. Can you? I was a Rechtsanwalt, a lawyer in Berlin 30 years. He shouted on my mother, on my grandmother. My mother wasn't there. And my grandmother, she was a very low, the height was this way.
Short.
Short. But she was a very, very clever woman. I tell you why. She slowly but surely pushed him to get out of the apartment. And when she succeeded, she closed the door. But you don't know why. Not because she couldn't. My grandfather was a big, strong man. He was afraid that my grandfather would come from the business, and he will break his bones. You know, he wouldn't. For such sayings, for such belief, I'd give you this family story that you will understand that people didn't know. Tell you another story. My mother didn't join to this case, but it was written in the books of historians. A day or 2 or 3 after we got here in Palestine, in Eretz Israel, it turned out that things are occurring in Europe we don't understand. That's now let's hear. So the Sochnut, the leaders of they decided to make an open press conference with the leaders of the Sochnut and the press in the measures of that time, 42. The 3 women of this group will tell what's going on in Europe, alive, and photographs and all this. And there was one member of the Sochnut, of the important VIPs, who was in charge of these 3 women, to take care of them, to bring them to the... So this meeting was, and tried at that time to do what they call, told the stories. And after the end of the meeting, the member of this VIP who was in charge of them took them on a certain place there in the building to give them some tea to drink or something to relax or not. And then he asked them, now you don't have the press here and all this big fuss, tell me the real story. They're not, he tells them, I mean, one of the leaders of them says, no, give me the real story of them, what's going on there. And one of these 3 women stood up, got him, slapped him, and I don't know whether the same go to hell or something, and left the place. I give you this example. That's not my story, that's my mother's story, because she wasn't one of these 3, but the historians write about it. Just first great example how the leadership of the Jewish community in Eretz Israel at that time didn't understand what's going on. Now later they started to make the strike and they didn't understand. And I say, I cannot have, and nobody says like this. There was also a part of the Yishuv here, of the, and you will understand the atmosphere, who thought, and they didn't say it loudly, these Jews there, the Gulas Yidden in wherever they are in Poland, we create as now the new Jew, strong and all this, without all this Gulas Yidden. He didn't say, expressed himself loudly that it's better that they live there or do the, but there was a thought like this. I tell you,
heard it.
I had many friends from all these communities, but that's less important now. That's not our subject. But when we came, going back to our coming to Israel, we came to Afula with the train, and then there was a big people. Many people came to see, to accept us, to receive us. And then it turned out that the British, if we were going out, getting on in by train, it is to go to Atlit through Haifa. And what has happened in Afula, in small measurements, they were afraid that in Haifa will be some demonstration which couldn't be controlled. And so they took us by buses from Afula straight ahead to Atlit. By train it couldn't be traced to Atlit. And there we were staying in Atlit another 10 days. Because the point is, it turned out later, the British want to be sure, they checked everything, that the German didn't bring some German espionage in this group, that they had to be sure. And as far as I heard, they found one spy or something like that. But that's all these espionage stories, that's less important to our story. So, but that caused us to be another 10 days in Atlit camp. You know what's Atlit?
Sure.
So,
a lot of the illegal immigrants, when they came on the boats, they took them straight out.
So they wanted to be sure. Okay, that was war at that time. You should never know what the German did. Maybe they pushed inside this group another.
And in Atlit, could you meet your grandparents?
Yeah.
That's where you met your...
Yeah, my grandfather, he came to Atlit to see us, but we had to keep staying there, and then he took us to
So
Tel
David,
Aviv.
how was the meeting when you saw your grandparents?
No,
And your mother's, how was your
I told you
mother's
something
reaction?
that my mother kept control all the time, and she wanted very much that we should feel happy that we come to our motherland. We were born in Holland, but we came also back for all that we were born in Enschede, but I always, I say, when I say that I came for Aliyah, as we say in English, in fact we were born in Israel, but she all the time gave the atmosphere of self-defense, not that fear will be that we are getting through a sure, good, secure way, we get out of it. That's the, and we all three, and also our other brother, we are not afraid. I can manage the street, but not we in the army. No. Now I'm getting back to my father. My father spent his time 5 years at this group. There went also problems of the cold weather and all this, food, yes or not, but they call this, you know, when a group gets together through a problem, life and through troubles, and they had some, not like the famous one, but they had at the end of the war, towarding the end of the war, they had some, what we call death march, when the German took, but they were together and they got through it. And they went into German by the German, were taken, and eventually they were freed when American paratroopers at the 8th of May, that's a former known peace treatment. There were American paratroopers were landed next to them, and they were taken, after a few days, they were taken to Italy by the American army, and there, somehow they joined the Jewish brigade, and then the Sochnut sent people, and they waited some time in Italy until everything was ordered. And they were taken by a ship, Mataroa. Mataroa is a famous ship because something else, not because of my father and the group. In the same ship was the first occasion of knowing each other, were also Tolik and Lolik. You know who is Tolik and Lolik? That's a nickname of Naftali Lavi Lau and Israel Meir Lau with the boys of Bruckenthal.
And they were on the ship together?
They knew each other. Naftali Lavi tells on his, I didn't know, Naftali Lavi tells in his book, in his biography, my mother called me once upon a time. You know what's written in the book of Naftali Lavi, Hen Am Kelavi? I heard that he published a book. I didn't know, didn't read it now. You know, don't believe it or not, he tells about Abba. What somebody told me, and I got the book from him. On this afternoon I went to the kibbutz, and Naftali Lavi tells several things of my father. Just to know, Naftali Lavi was then 16 years old. his younger brother, Israel, was 8 years old. And he was in charge of him. But it was a whole group of boys from Bruckenthal. And Naftali Levi tells that my father gave lessons, Torah lessons and all this in the ship. But he gave him the first lesson of education and politics in Eretz Israel. My father had the advantage. He was already in Eretz Israel. He knows what's going on in politics and all this. And he tells in his book, after a few days in Atlit, was a group of leaders from the Aliyat HaNoar who were supposed to interview all these youngsters where they are going to be sent to and there were two religious men, and that's how he describes it. First of all, just you will understand how curious it was. They came just on Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av. But there were two religious men, one with a long beard, and one, how he describes it, with a mustache and a face like Errol Flynn. That's what he described. And he says that my father told him, you should choose to go with Errol Flynn. My father didn't say Errol Flynn, because he was of Poalei Agudat Israel, and you should insist that you and the boys of Bruckenthal should go on and be in a Haredic school, not to be sent to another kibbutz. Harav Israel Lau tells me and describes it, I don't know whether it really was not, that outside of this meeting were ready as the buses to several kibbutzim where the boys are going to be taken. Not only these boys, but the first lesson was you should insist you want to go to Haredic schools. That's the way how they were educated. They have no parents now, but so he got from my father first lesson of politics and education in Eretz Israel in our days. And the story, anyway, when I tell you another story that's very piquant. In the meantime, I told you that after 10 years of waiting, at 44, two kibbutzim of Poalei Agudat Israel were united and getting to the place where until these days is kibbutz Chafetz Chaim. They got the land from the Sochnut, land of Keren Kayemet, and. But as the first, that place was for a temporary time, was another kibbutz, whose name was Shar HaNegev, at that place. And they moved to the north, which is known until nowadays as Kfar Salt. You heard this name. So, but at the very beginning days, was no electricity in the kibbutz. Was only one place of electricity. They left, there was, איך אומרים באר?
It's like a well.
Well, an electric well, they left it there. They couldn't take it with them. And that was the only spot where was any electricity. It was for the well, but there was no electricity. Used gas lamps and all this in the meantime. But the story goes on like this. At that time was a radio station until the days of the Mandat in Jerusalem. Its name was The Voice of Jerusalem, Kol Yerushalayim. And they were working, transmitting 3 times a week, news or whatever at that time, news, and also was a special place for המדור לחיפוש קרובים, תא דואר 92, ירושלים. I remember the...
That is for relatives to know.
Not whoever wants to send something for... Because you cannot imagine, after the war, people didn't know who is alive, who is not, wherever it is in a certain camp in Germany, people want to find each other. And we were sitting, some of the members of the kibbutz, he was an electrician, he didn't know how to connect Parat, we call it Parat connection with the electricity of that well. And the one radio big, was connected to this, so we could hear every night, no light, nothing. A few members of the, and the kid, David Bruckenthal, who was at that time, it's the year 45, summer 45, I was 8 years old. Sitting and hearing the news and the messages from, and one night, just like this, we heard הלל ברוקנטל מוסר דרישת שלום למשפחה בקיבוץ, אני בדרך לארץ ישראל.
And you heard the message?
I heard the message. Otherwise, I heard as a kid, because you have to understand something about me. Even at that age of 8, even younger, I was very much interested and I knew everything about politics, about what's going on in Europe. I came from Europe. The kids in the kibbutz didn't know what is the world. And I was very much interested. I heard it. And parallel to this was from Sochnut. My grandparents got a message from the Sochnut that Hillel is alive, he is now in Italy, getting sooner or later to Eretz Israel. And the brother of my mother, who lives with his parents in Tel Aviv, he came especially somehow to the kibbutz to tell her that's something official, or what son heard something. And so we knew that my father is on his way to back home. Now I'll tell you something else. On the day he was supposed to come to Haifa, we were taken to Tel Aviv, to our grandparents there in Tel Aviv, and my mother got to Haifa harbor and to wait to accept my father. And at a certain time was told we were waiting or not waiting at the apartment. We were told the car has arrived. And I suppose you will understand that we were 3 kids at that time that went downstairs the car with my father. All 3 of us jumped under the bed of my grandmother, hid it there, hidden. We were hidden there, and it was took long time to convince us to get out. But you should understand, I suppose, on one side we were happy that our father had arrived. On one side that was somebody
you didn't know.
We didn't know. We were afraid. Who knows what's going on? I imagine that I remember my father. My mother told us all the time, and we have pictures and all that. About the controversial feelings of kids who didn't know comes a strange man who's supposed to be a father, we know everything, but that's a feeling of a kid. That's a fact. It took some time to convince us to get out from under the bed of my grandmother to meet our father. It wasn't so easy.
And when you met your father?
Okay, we were happy, but from a strange man to get the family feelings, that's not so easy. Just imagine it. It's
very hard.
And for him, it was, I always explain to people, take a man who is prisoned, or lehavdil, man who serves in the army. In the prison, he knows he got 10 years prison. So he makes on the wall, we call it Tavlat Yeush. You know what it is?
No, it's...
you sign every day, but you have 10 years, and in these 5 years, nobody knows. That's not fixed. Nobody knows how much time it will take, if we survive it or not. Who knows? And a man who is in such a situation, he can imagine what's going on. He gets information. It's not so easy. I tell you something.
Did he cry when he saw you? Your father must have been so emotional. It must have been...
Yeah, of course. I tell you something else. For the first time when he came back to the kibbutz, we call it, there was time of rehabilitation. We have to get used to another situation, another society, another rules. We were told, I didn't see it, but my mother told it. It happened so, one of the first days in the kibbutz, the apartment of the kibbutz was a small room at that time. Somebody came to say, I suppose shalom, or said, to say something to my father, knocks on the door, comes in, and my father spontaneously stands up and stands straight like he did 5 years. Spontaneously. It's funny, but you can imagine that's a situation. It takes time. But my father got over it, and he worked very hard later in the kibbutz. But then the family united again, and we had another 6 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
We are 9 together, and you can imagine all of them. Baruch Hashem, one of my Israel, this who comes after me, year after me, he died a few years ago. He was a professor in the agriculture department of the Hebrew University in Rehovot, and other apartments. But anyway, but we were 9. Can you imagine? Let's put it. Let's take the Milchemet Yom Kippur, the War of Yom Kippur. My parents had 6 sons and 3 sons-in-law. 6 of them were in the paratroopers, and 2 in other infantry. But it wasn't so easy for them, but they got through some harder times. I suppose that's on one side you had passed something through, but on the other hand, life goes on.
And David, what did your father do when he came? Was he a rabbi?
When he came back, he very quickly became active in the kibbutz. He was officially appointed on one hand by the kibbutz and on other hand from the chief rabbinate, Rabbanut Rashit, as a rabbi of the kibbutz. That's a hard work, not so easy, but he started the school system of the kibbutz from scratch, as we said. First the elementary school, then the high school for girls, because the boys went to several yeshivot. But you have to understand that in Chafetz Chaim, the rabbi is something different from being a rabbi for community, wherever it is in Israel or in abroad. Because Chafetz Chaim was described a Haredi school, a Haredi kibbutz, which means we are going together, we are going as the other youngsters go. It's not, we are not, that's a Yekish department, a Yekish community coming out from Germany. That's different from, but one of the principles on one side was they want to keep the halakha during their life and not to rely on several heterim or whatever we can, that on one side. Let's give a very important duty and responsibility for the rabbi of the kibbutz. On the other hand, to do with the task or job of the rabbi of the Chafetz Chaim is different from all other, the religious life wherever you go. If I call it the constitution of the kibbutz, gives the authority to the rabbi of the kibbutz to be among all the institutes of the kibbutz. This General Assembly, the secretary, if one of the members of the kibbutz, doesn't matter what subject it is discussed, claims that this belongs to the rabbi decision, the discussion stops and goes to the rabbi. The rabbi can decide that you can go on. But I say that the authority, the full authority of a rabbi in the Chafetz Chaim is so strong. But my father he was so modest. That is somehow a trouble of us. Most what we know, most of them, we know from other people.
It wasn't first hand. He didn't want to, he was too modest.
There's a modesty, a certain way of modesty, of anava. He didn't want. We found out many things. Many other good men tell you. For instance, of this group in the Upper Silesia, under the Germans. A member of this group, from Kibbutz Na'an, he told us, your father tried it, the meaning somehow to keep kosher. He tried, and can you see from the photo, he was a thin man. He didn't want for himself, almost not. Even he, with his modesty, he told me once upon a time that the first year being in the camp there, a month and a half before Pesach, he made an agreement with some goys there that, he will exchange with him potatoes for bread. So that he'll give him his potatoes, and when Pesach comes, he has to eat chometz. That's very nice, but this member of the group from Na'an, he wrote it and he told me, we said to Hillel, if you want to live, we won't let you to die. You cannot go on with this way. If you have almost nothing to eat, you have to eat what you have. You cannot have the kosher temple or any other. And that's way. But he knew how to behave, but it wasn't so easy. But in the kibbutz, he as a rabbi, he was the most important man there.
David, can I ask, what happened to the Hakshara, the boys from
The Hakshara, I tell you, in fact, the Hakshara, in the Hakshara was a discussion. They discussed the situation like in many other places. What to do, what to do, especially when my mother was taken.
Yeah,
they had no leadership. The three common opinions were, one of the opinions, which they did already, a third of them, almost third, were joining the underground in Holland. Another third were hiding at farmers' places, wherever the farmers accepted it. If they accepted it, that they will hide there. And a third of them said, we are going to wait what's going on. And they were taking two camps. Now the story is that in each group, a part of them were died or by hiding by farmer. The farmer was because of a slaughter, because of the German took them and killed also the farmer. Yeah. And the same happened in the camps. Most of them were killed in the camps, and at the end, about 50% of the Hakshara, whatever they did during the war, about 50% survived. And was somebody who did a research about all the Haksharot in Holland. And it happened so, he writes it, that it happened so that the percentage of surviving in all the Haksharot, from all the movement, was the highest in the Enschede Agudat Israel Hakshara. But highest. There were 50%, others were, let's say, 45%. If somebody wants to learn something about it. So.
And did they come to Israel? Did they come?
Most of them.
And
most of them. I can tell you something about it. The connection between the members of the Hakshara here in Israel, at least, but not only that. One of them got to Australia. One of them. But all who lived in Israel, I tell you, with all occasions of weddings, funerals, Brit Milah, I saw it I personally saw it. Look, my father died early, at 72 years old. That's now about 40 years. My mother lived to 103. So that's about 4 years or something. Only at her last years, like from 98, the situation deteriorated slowly, but until 98 she was very active. Look, I came from, at least once a week when she was already, fine and everything. Let's say that I went, 3 of our brothers are in the kibbutz. I came from time to time to once a week at least, or twice a week, to visit her. Just to give you an example, I couldn't come to the kibbutz to visit her without letting her know, finding out whether she is there or not, because she was moving money, she was independent. She didn't ask anybody where to go to, where to drive. No, not to drive. Where to go there, to friends, to that. So she was very active.
And the Hakshara group kept the kish with your parents?
Now what I want to do, to tell you, these friends of Achshara, members of the Achshara, when she attended any occasion, if it's a funeral, if it's a Brit Milah, of a son, of a grandson, of a grand-grandson, or whatever it is, you could see that even when she was, let's say, 85, and they, if they're alive, say 80, or so, if she would tell them, jump down from the window or something, they would die. What Mali would say. With my father was the same, but he was a very introvert. He didn't. But Mali was the ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. They admired her so much because, if you can describe it, she gave them in a way.
She was like they were like their parents.
The self-independence, they could do whatever. Until their last years, she lived over them because she lived until 103. But that's something different. So I could see on their eyes, Mali said so and Mali said so. That's how she lived it, because she did something. Her cold weather, her cold mood, just to keep control, to do what is needed, not to go into fearness, not to be in the fear, not to keep control. You show them that we are on our way. We can not to be hysteric.
And that's she must have had
in those days, to be hysteric, that's the easiest solution. And they did have somebody to look after, to see what she says, and that's it. That was until then.
Your father's friends from the where he was kept, did they all keep the kesher as well? Did they keep the connection?
Yeah, he was kept, so that's a problem. He was, nobody almost know anything what's going on with him.
No, but when they came to Eretz Israel, he kept with all his friends.
They admired my father, but my father was a rabbi, in fact, they knew that I described to you that my mother, one of the things, what she told, what gave her the strength to do what she did, what she imagined that he gets the direction for my father somewhere where he is.
That's amazing.
And you can understand it as you want to, but they were sure that this combination of these two people, many times I say, I don't know how such different types with the quality, but that's how it's worked.
And David, I have to ask you, your father's extended family and your mother's family that didn't come here, what was the fate of the families? Were many killed?
My grandma.
Those the relatives and.
My father had in Ushchigidol now a father and a sister. They were writing to each other. The last message was from him. His mother died 2 years before the war, but his father, he was corresponding with my mother because my father was already taken. His last postcard was Ktiva v'chatima tova, congratulations to the next coming year, and was written there something like, let's hope with the help of the Kadosh Baruch Hu for a better year. That was the year of 41, and the coming year. And after Rosh Hashanah, the whole community, most of the community was taken to the forest deserts and were killed, shot. No. So his wish didn't. wasn't fulfilled. Who knows whether it's better or worse. That's how it worked. Yes, there are many other little stories, but
David, I just want to thank you because
before I finish, the language is here. I want to do something. You know, usually when I talk about it, I can read something in you which I wrote someday in Hebrew. I read it to you. You will understand it, and I'll give you a translation into English of this poem. So you do it what you wish to do. Okay? That's somehow a summary, a conclusion of the whole story. But that's to do with me, and you'll understand. I write it, I read it. You can have it with you in English. That's not. You can see at the end. She writes it. The lady who translated it read on the end. On the end.
Okay, well.
No, but the meaning you have it, you can follow me up, but anyway, you can read it later. Yeah? Its name is in Hebrew, Ani Makir Otam. Read it later now, you can hear, you understand Hebrew.
Sure. But maybe for our listeners, if you could translate as well, though, because it's so important.
Anyway. אני מכיר אותם בכל פינה, באור הבוקר וברדת החשיכה, בעיניהם הכבויות בקינה, ובדמעות פתע של איכה איכה. אני מכיר אותם בכל שעה, בשעת עצב ובשעת שמחה, כשעולה בזיכרונם כל מי שלא זכה. אני מכיר אותם בכל עונה, בצעירותם ובזקנה, כאשר כל שעה, כל שנה, להם כמו במתנה ניתנה. אני מכיר אותם ברחוב, על כביש ומדרכה, תוך נהיגה והליכה, שנראית כריצה שפופה ובריחה. אני מכיר אותם במחשבה, באמונה ובכפירה, שנימוקיה וטעמיה בתקופה הארורה. ראיתי אותם בתחנת הרכבת, נרעדים לכל צפירה, שמא תנהל סופית שוב דלת לאחר הסגירה. ראיתי אותם ליד הפסים, נבעטים משקשוק המסילה, שאך לכיוון אחד מובילה, ללא אפשרות חזרה. ראיתי אותם ליד כל גדר טובה, חוששים מדוקרניה ומחשמולה, שדרכם לצאת יכולה רק הנשמה כולה. ראיתי אותם במצעד צהלי, נבהלים ממשק הרקיעה, ובמטווח על מטרות דמות ממתחי הירייה. ראיתים ליד פחי אשפה, מקוננים על כל פרוסה, ועל שיירי ירקות הראויים לנפש רעבה. צפיתי במבטם נפחד ונורא, על כתובת קעקע של צעירה, שבזיכרונם העלתה ושחזרה את קעקוע זרועם הממוספרה. שמעתי את כפירתם על אלוהים שנשרף ונעלם, באור כבשנם ועשנם, ויחד עמו שארית אמונתם. אך נוכחתי גם במי שתודתם על עליון שבשעת רעתם הציל את שארית פליטתם, ונצח ישראל עתידם. הייתי עמם את צברים קוצניים בשחצנותם, על צאן לטבח הפילו חטאתם, כמוגי לב לעומת גבורתם. ראיתי אבות שמנעו מזרעם את סגור ליבם, ואת סבלם, ואימהות שקלעו בתוך נפשן את ייסורי זעקתן ואת רעם שתיקתן. ראיתי משפחות שקרח הזוועות בבלוקי המחנות לא הפשיר בעולמן ולא קמו מהשפלתן, וקבוצות של אימהות שכפעון מכתן סגר את רחמן מחשש לעתידו של ילדן. גם ראיתי ילדים שבגרו, דור שני לתופתם, שהמשיכו והתייסרו בלא אור ובאופקם. ראיתי אותם בנעקתם, פצע וחבורה ומכת ראייה כולם, כמו לא בשמן רוקחה מעולם, ואין מזור תם ונשלם. אך ראיתי גיבורי חיל שבנו מחדש את עולמם, זורו וחובשו בהקמת משפחתם ועמם, תוך שנדרו לא לשכוח לעולם. וגם ראיתי צעירים וצעירות שלא עלתה בידם להכיר את אבות אבותם ואימותם, דור הגז והאפר ולהבינם. אך כשראו מקרוב את הנעליים בערימותם, המשקפיים, השיניים ושערם, חשו באפס קצהו של אסונם, והבינו מיהו הנבחר מכולם. אבינו מלכנו, חוננו וחננם, חזק את רוחנו ואת עוז רוחם, כי לא לעבדים ולשפחות נמכרנו חינם. מאפר ורמץ, נא הוציאנו והקימם, לא עוד לעולם תם.
David, I'm just going to come in because I really feel, first of all, to thank you so much. But I just want to translate this because this is, I've never heard a poem like this. First of all, David, ein milim, there are no words to thank you. I'm so grateful to you. Your miracles and it's just, this has been the most unbelievable to meet you. It's such an honor and a privilege, and I'm so grateful to you. From the bottom of my heart, I really am. I just feel I have to translate it. It will take me a minute.
I
want the listeners to hear because it is so amazing. David, maybe you can read it. No, it's good.
No, it's better you read it.
I know them. It was written in Hebrew by David Bruckenthal and translated by Razi Feldman. I know them at every corner, from morning until darkness descends, by the extinguished or diminished eyes and their sudden uncontrollable tears. I know them at every hour, in times of sadness and in times of joy, when they recall everyone who did not succeed in surviving. I know them at every season, from youth to old age, when every hour and year is a gift granted to them. I know them on the street, on the highway, on the sidewalk, while driving and while walking, looking like hunchbacks on the run. I know them from what they think, believe and deny, based on, as a result of, the horrible period. I saw them at the train station, trembling from the sound of every siren, in case the door would be locked and never open after it closed. I saw them next to the train tracks, terrified by the rumble of the tracks, leading in one direction with no possibility of return. I saw them next to the good fence, fearing punching the barbed wire and electrocution, affording a way out for only the soul. I saw them at the Israeli army parade, frightened by the noise of the stamping feet and the booming from the salvos of the shooting range. David, it's incredible. I saw them next to the trash cans, mourning every slice of bread and discarding vegetables suitable for a hungry soul. I anticipated the expression full of horror at the tattoo of a young girl who in the memory raised fear of the number branded on their arms. I heard the denial of God who was burned and disappeared in the light of the furnaces and smoke extinguished their remaining faith. But I also realized that the thoughts about a supreme being above the wickedness of the oppressors, who rescued the refugees and who spared for the glory of Israel and their future. I was with them, with arrogant sabras, disdained the sheep who were led to the slaughter, dismissed their dread as cowardly in comparison of their own bravery. I saw fathers who barred from their descendants knowledge of their pent-up hearts and torment, and mothers who imprisoned in their minds the sufferings of their cries and thunder of their silence. I saw families subjected to the icicle of horrors in blocks of the camps, unable to thaw to the world, failing to rise from the humiliation, and groups of mothers whose frozen from the blow that befell them closed their wombs of fear of the future of their children. I saw children who grew up in second generation after the inferno continue to suffer without fight on their horizon. I saw them moaning, harmed and bruised and freshly wounded all, as if there was never any slave to soften them, with no relief. But I also saw the brave warriors who rebuilt their world, overcome their wounds, determined to rebuild their families and their countries, resolving never ever to forget. And I also saw youngsters who never had a chance to know and understand their ancestors, their grandfathers, their grandmothers, the generation of gas, ashes and flames. But when they saw from up close the piles of shoes, the eyeglasses, the teeth and the hair, they began to sense the catastrophe and understood who the chosen people were. Our Father, the King, accept our prayers and theirs. Strengthen our spirit and boldness of theirs, for we were not sold as slaves and made servants in vain. From dust and ashes, please restore us and them, that this may never happen again, ever. Phew, David, I've never read such a poem ever, and it's unbelievable. It is something that touches the soul. There are no words.
That is,
I just want to show for our viewers, because this is a beautiful picture of your mother, you and your two brothers. And David, as a big favor, if you could just show the pictures, a little explanation of these pictures, because this is so dear and so special.
Oh, should I this way?
I'm going to, I don't know. But the very front page of the book in itself is so, yes, that's wonderful. David, thank you.
Yeah. Here you can see my mother, a childhood in Munich. My grandma as a baby, holding my mother. And here again a photo from Munich. My grandma with my mother here. Malchen. And that's another family photo with cousins in Munich. But here you can see, just here, look at this photo. Sometime after her marriage with a rabbi from the kibbutz, who was a real religious man. Just look at her. That's what she means. Here they are together, and here as a bride, you can see. Now here are photos from Holland already. My mother with 3 kids. That's already after my father was taken. That's me, that's Israel, and that's Mordechai. And here my father holding me as a young baby. You see, these also are photos. These are 2 photos after my father was taken. And again, my mother with us 3. That's my father giving a lesson of Daf Yomi for the members of the Akshara. You can see. And these again just photos of atmosphere. My mother with the kids. Now, this photo is from the camp in Upper Silesia. You see, this is a group which I described to you as a combine. There is another story which is not here. That's my came in order from the management of the camp that there is a funeral supposed to be taken on a town not far from the camp of a Jew. So they knew that my father is a rabbi. So they took him. It's not this. That's not that's a group of the combine, but my father had to be taken out of the camp as a rabbi to organize a funeral for these Jews who are still there in this German town. Oh, here you have a photo of this funeral. Somebody, I don't know who took the photo of it, I don't know.
And where is your father in it?
Here you can see, that's not such a good photo, you can see here Rabbi Hillel Bruckenthal organizing a group taken from the camp in Upper Silesia. And here, you see, that's a photo of the passport, Mandatorian passport.
Which saved your lives?
Yeah. I can show the original. I have the original here. You see, at that time, which is not known today, it was also for saving money, but you get a passport of the husband and the wife together. Yeah. There's a story about it. When my father was taken by the German, he took the passport with himself and told my mother, just go immediately, go to the Swiss consul here and take for him a piece of paper that he assures that you are a British Mandatorian citizen. And he put his piece, my mother put it in the bag, or I don't know, and she kept it as a piece of paper. That was her evidence that she is a British Mandatory.
And this is it?
No, this is a passport.
No, the one next to it.
No. This is a document. Of the High Commissioner of the Westerbork.
Oh, okay. Allowing.
Which says that Mali Bruckenthal and David Bruckenthal and Israel Bruckenthal and Mordechai Bruckenthal are should be from here to Palestine. That we were waiting, my mother was waiting 2 days because he was somewhere else. He had to come, you see
it's amazing
all the
with
stamps.
The stamps.
That's an original document. But here, this is a list.
I think that's the list. That's the list with Bruckenthal.
Yeah, that's a list. There are two lists here. That's a list, the first list, from Switzerland to the colonies department, or the foreign affairs department of the British Society, of the British government, just to give the list of the potential names. Here there are somehow 92 names, but here this list is a receipt list from the British Commissioner of the Mandate. I received this night, this is all these people.
And your family name's on it.
Yeah. This a friend of mine found this document in the National British Archive. He found this. Now here you can see my father, so in position.
This is in Chafetz Chaim.
Okay, that's in the kibbutz. Here you have the 6 who were born in in the kibbutz afterwards, after the war. We were always explaining, we were asked already, why is such a difference between the third and the fourth one? I tell you, there was a war between. Let's can you starting the whole story? No, that's one of the groups which my mother was directing in the kibbutz. And the kibbutz, that's the important one. You see, here are members of the kibbutz in the independence war in 48. So my father from the kibbutz, they were in the front in Julis. They are members of the kibbutz, and you can see here my father. You can identify here with a jacket and the head. He visited them from time to time from the kibbutz to encourage them to. That's another photo of our brothers and. When we were a bit more grown up. That's it.
And David, and the cover is so. This is a picture of. Wow, it's magnificent.
Yeah.
With your mother.
That's a combination of my mother and the three kids, and this letter which allows us to get us from Westerbork to Palestine, and just as a symbol, the
train.
The train.
And David, I have to ask you, if I could ask you, what message do you give to your children and grandchildren?
So I try to do what my mother said. Never to despair. If you are, I learned it from many other times, the being in Eretz Israel is not compulsory, that's a right. And when you live here, it's not so easy. We know all the problems, but that's if we got that right, the zchut to live here, that's many Jews didn't have this. And we have a good reason to go on with all the complaints and all this. We know it very well what everybody is complaining about. Many of them don't understand that whatever we have here in Eretz Israel, that's an advantage for us. That's not complaining about, there are many troubles here, and I understand that they understand it as far as I can understand my kids. I have 5 kids, I have already 16 grandchildren, and one, just 2 months ago, one grandson. My granddaughter, she is working now in the Israeli embassy in Switzerland. And she gave birth to this one, to Imri, my grandson, and for the Pidyon Ben, I got there to Bern, and I took part in it. Anyway, and we'll go on. Don't worry, we go on. Just imagine something else. My father, in fact, was left alone from all of the family. And for instance, just when we celebrated my mother's 100 years birthday, we made it a Shabbat, a whole Shabbat for whoever could join it in the kibbutz. Shabbat, a whole Shabbat. And it took, the cost was not so cheap. Anyway, we were there 153 joining this celebration for a whole Shabbat. And the tribe is going on. As usual, people like this, my mother always said, my victory on the Germans, when I can see all this, that's my victory. They tried, and we, with the help of God, got over.
David,
And that's a unique story, I know it. That's a unique story. And we thank God every day, believe me. We don't have a ceremony about it. It's not, we can do it like my father did. God knows what we think about it. Without a big fuss and all this, but that's how we think about it. And let's go on.
David, you and your parents and your story is an inspiration we can all only imagine and dream that we could emulate. So thank you so much. I am so extremely grateful.
Thank you.